If you invented something in your shop or in your garage, would you want to make money on it? I think most of us would. Now, add in the fact that this new invention could potentially change people's lives and or save lives or the quality of life that they would live if this technology had been there. Now, would you still want to make money on it, or would you give it away for free? Well, I think that's where we're at in this discussion. Dear SawStop. Before we get into this, I am a huge fan of SawStop, the machine. I have a SawStop 3 horsepower PCS, one of the best machines I've ever used and have in the shop. I love that saw. It's an awesome machine. This is also a great machine. I purchased this one myself and has been very good to me, except the fence, which I had a little trouble to begin with, but we got that worked out. We're not talking about the machines. We're talking about the patent system and everything that goes into the safety mechanism on the saw. Should that have been freely available? Let me know in the comments. Let me tell you what I think. In 1999, Dr. Stephen Gass had an idea to make a table saw safer. And in about 2 weeks on an old cheap table saw, he was able to come up with this invention that we know today as the SawStop flesh sensing technology. It is an amazing technology, and he believed in it so much at some point after the invention, after he tested numerous hot dogs on it, he tested his own finger. He's quoted as saying it hurt like the dickens, but it didn't cut his finger off. He proved that it worked, and he had enough faith that it worked that he used his own finger. I don't know that I would have done that. Dr. Gass has a doctorate in physics and is a patent attorney. And in 2000, he joined 3 of his partners, also patent attorneys, and they formed the company SawStop. So they had some unique skills available to them that most inventors don't have. Patent attorney and physics doctorate. So that's a unique combo there. In 2001, Dr. Gass presented this technology to a trade group of attorneys in Las Vegas. He showed it working on a hot dog piece of plywood. Once the SawStop, the company was founded, they weren't making saws. They tried to license this technology to other table saw manufacturers. And we're talking about the big names at the time. You're talking early 2000s. You got Delta, Craftsman, Ryobi, Black & Decker, Emerson, and some others that were really powerful, big name players in the space. He presented it and none of them took him up on the offer. From the research I read, SawStop was trying to get 8% licensing fee. In other words, whatever company was going to put this technology in their saw would pay SawStop 8% on the wholesale of the saw. None of them took it. They didn't want it. They didn't want to do it. And there's a couple of reasons why, which I'll touch on in just a second. In 2002, Ryobi and SawStop almost came to an agreement to put SawStop into Ryobi. Can you imagine today if SawStop was in Ryobi? Ryobi would be one of the biggest names in the business, I think. So what happened was they didn't come to an agreement. There were some contract disputes there that they just couldn't come to an agreement, which winds up being bad for Ryobi 3 years later. We'll talk about. In 2003, Dr. Gass and his partners petitioned the Consumer Product Safety Commission to try to make it a rule to mandate all table saws have this technology on them. This discussion went on for multiple years all the way up. The last thing I've read is 2017, and it still hasn't happened. You can imagine making a rule to implement a safety system that some one company has a monopoly on, while in the petition, if you read it, I'll link it below, there's talk about using other methods to do this, but no one has been able to come up with one since. Well, Bosch came up with a system that stopped the blade, but SawStop sued them. Since no one would buy this or license their technology, SawStop and the founders just decided to make their own. So in 2004, they started making what we have today, SawStop table saws. The problem with having somebody else's technology in your table saw, from what I gather from all my reading and research, is you're adding $150 to $200 per saw. Take the little small DeWalt table saw that I paid $300 for, well now it's $500. That puts it into a whole new ball game, whole new level of table saw as far as budget goes. So a lot of the table saw manufacturers didn't want to add that much expense to their table saws. Also, if you look at implementing this into table saws, and we don't want to raise the price of a lower end saw, so we only put it in our higher end saws, what do you think is going to happen? Somebody with a lower end saw gets injured and they wind up turning around and suing the manufacturer because it is in the higher end, but not in the lower end. There's an article in the Washington Post from 2001, Mr. Scott Box, who was the manager of product development for Delta Machinery at the time, and he's quoted as saying, safety-wise, it is one of the most innovative features I've seen in the last 20 years. We're talking about the SawStop technology. It could raise the price of a $170 saw used by many woodworking hobbyists to $300. And that's part of the problem. He goes on to say, I see it as being used in upper end saws more than those that sell under $500. Problem, he said, is that if Delta doesn't add the feature to all the table saws, it could risk being a target of product liability lawsuits by people injured using the lower end saw without this feature. And then later in the article, that is backed up by Victor Schwartz, who is a Washington lawyer who specializes in product liability. He says, I can see the trial if something goes wrong. Here's a company that provides safety for the rich, but not for the poor. So you can see where the table saw manufacturers really didn't want to get into this battle if they licensed this technology and didn't put it across the board and raise the price of all their saws. Remember, Ryobi did not license that SawStop technology in 2002? Well, in 2005, a man named Carlos Osorio was working on a job site and he injured his hand on a Ryobi BTS-15 table saw, similar to what you see on the screen here. He goes on to sue Ryobi, claiming negligence and breach of implied warranty of merchantability. He argued that the BTS-15 was unacceptably dangerous due to a defective design, and he largely in that trial relied on the testimony of Dr. Stephen Gass, owner of the SawStop. So forcing SawStop to release their technology for free to everybody is not really an issue or not really a question, because the patent system protects them as it should. If you invented something in your garage, like we stated earlier, you would want that protected so that you would be the sole maker of that so you can make your money. And I'm not a patent attorney, but from what I've researched, they last 20 years. You got a 20-year window to protect that patent. Now, there's some changes that can be made to the patent, and you can update those from what I read. Again, not a patent attorney. Check that out for yourself. So you can't force SawStop to give that technology away. However, SawStop could give it away for free if they so chose, which would destroy their, it would destroy their business, right? So if you take Volvo, for instance, on July 10th, 1962, Volvo come up with the invention of the 3-point seat belt. And that invention has saved millions of lives. Why? Well, because Volvo opened that patent up for any manufacturer to use without having to pay a licensing fee to Volvo. So ethically, I think they did an amazing thing. Especially once seatbelt laws started being mandated, they could have really made a lot of money off of that, but they decided that it was more important to share this safety innovation than to profit off of it. Hats off to you, Volvo. Now, the automotive industry took the original design and have innovated even further over the years and have just made it better and better. Imagine if SawStop would do that, the same thing now. Dear SawStop. Take Bosch, for example. In 2015, they come out with a table saw called the Reax. While it worked as saving injuries similar to a SawStop, it didn't stop the blade. It just simply dropped the blade extremely fast below the surface of the table saw so you couldn't cut yourself with the blade. What happened was SawStop sued them for patent infringement. A judge did find that they violated 2 of the patents that SawStop had, but not a couple of the others that were named in the lawsuit. So that basically stopped any competition from showing up to compete with the SawStop system. As of May 2018, the Consumer Product Safety Commission basically still hasn't made a decision on the table saw safety. This has been going on for over a decade, close to 20 years now, from the time it was petitioned to now. And so there's really been no decision made, mainly because the other major tool manufacturers have been lobbying the CPSC to not implement this. Again, the reasons stated before, litigation, costs, all that go into play. And I think patent expiration also comes into play now because it's been so long. As we talked about earlier, most patents expire 20 years after they're filed. I'm not a patent attorney. Go consult your patent attorney. Why haven't other people come along and used the patents now that they're expired? Well, some of the patents are expired, but some are not. SawStop owns, from what I can gather, over 100 patents now. So how many of those are going to last into years to come? Who knows? So I'm really conflicted on this issue because in one aspect, I really believe in the patent system. I think it's absolutely necessary for a capitalistic society to operate so that you can make money on something you invented. If I've invented this table saw, I would absolutely want to make a profit off of it. Now, if I invented this table saw, but it also did not cut off my hand, at what point does it start blurring the lines? Remember the Volvo patent? It was given away freely? Well, that was because the president of Volvo at the time had lost a relative that really affected him, and he wanted to do that. So he poached, as they say, an engineer from Saab, another automaker, and then he prioritized him coming up with this design. So he had a driving force behind it. People can patent medicines and have for years. They patent different cancer treating medicines and all sorts of things that really benefit the people who can get that medicine, but it's patented so nobody else can make it, and then they profit off of it. So it's been going going on in the pharmaceutical forever. It goes on in technology, it goes on in SawStop, it goes on everywhere. So SawStop is not the enemy here. It's not that I'm trying to portray them as a bad company. They did exactly what the law provides them to do. The question is, I guess, is what do you think? Do you think they should have been the Volvo of the power tool companies and just give this technology away for free? Or do you think they were right to do exactly what they did? I have given this way too much thought, and I have spent hours researching this stuff, and I really believe that if I was in Dr. Gass's shoes, I would have done something extremely similar to him. Why? Well, he had an idea. He decided, you know what? Nobody else wants this. I'll just do it myself. And him and 3 partners just put their boots on and went to work. And there's no telling how many millions of dollars they invested in their technology, in their research and development. And should they be punished by getting this taken away from them, or should they be just given away for free with all the money and time invested? I don't think so. I think that they should be able to make money on a product like this, even if it's for the betterment of the world. Now, Volvo's a very special case. How many times has that happened where the owner of the patent just opened it up and let people take it? I don't think it's happened very often. So personally, I don't think SawStop was wrong in much of what they've done. I don't agree with a few things, but for the most part, overall, the big picture, I think they did a very good job making a very safe product, and they really tried to get it out there for others to use, even if they were trying to make a profit. That's business. That's how it works. Honestly, an 8% licensing fee is peanuts compared to what could be saved. Your fingers, your arms, your hand. That's just minor amount of money. Yeah, it's gonna cost on the lower end, and yes, they would have to implement it from the cheapest saw they make to the most expensive saw they make. So I'm not just putting the onus on SawStop, because all the tool manufacturers had the opportunity and have the opportunity, I don't know if they still have it, but they had the opportunity to license this technology and put it in all of their table saws to really change the lives of everyone that's ever had a saw accident. And I can guarantee you, if you ask anybody whose hand has ever touched that blade, would 8% more on the saw be worth it? Every single one of them would tell you they would give you 8% plus more. It's highly unlikely anybody would say, well, my finger wasn't worth 8% more on a $300 saw. Come on, man. One thing I think SawStop gets unfairly accused of is being a patent troll. You'll see that comment a lot. A patent troll, from what I can gather, is someone who buys up a bunch of patents that are just laying out there and then basically just threatens to sue people all the time for violating the patent so that they can get a settlement. That's absolutely not what SawStop did. SawStop was an invention made by Dr. Gass, who couldn't get it licensed or picked up by other manufacturers, so he decided to strike out on his own. Either way, he came up with the invention, patented it himself, and then took it from there. So patent troll is an unfair accusation, in my opinion. Who are you siding with? SawStop, who offered this for years, tried to get people to license their technology and they just wouldn't? Or are you going to side with the tool companies who's like, yeah, we're not paying that because we don't want to up our prices, and we certainly don't want to put it on the lower end saws, but we would have put it on the higher end saws, but we don't want to risk litigation. And then you got SawStop trying to force regulations on their technology to implement it into others, and they suing Bosch. Like, there's just a whole lot going on here that we're trying to unpack. So dear SawStop, thank you for making your product. Thank you for chasing the dream when nobody else believed in you. You just done it yourself. That's the American way. We just get after it and get it done. And I appreciate that. There's no telling how many thousands of people's hands, arms, fingers have been saved by this technology. Now, I am not sponsored and have never been sponsored by SawStop, nor is this video intended to get me sponsored for the trolls out there. I just really dove deep into this, and I had a whole lot of mixed feelings at it. And by the end of the video and by the end of my research, I just come to the conclusion that SawStop did what it had to do to get the product on the market when nobody else wanted it. And then they still tried to get some regulations passed to help more people, but it just hasn't happened. So you really can't fault SawStop for the way they've handled their business. They've done an amazing job making an amazing product so that we could be safer. So dear SawStop, thank you. If you like this video, check out the Dear Milwaukee video right there. Click in the box, get you the big old virtual fist bump. Also, another one of my favorite videos right there.